Rome could not survive by staying where it was. The decline is real. When the original capital became too exposed, too distant, and too burdened with the past, Constantine looked east and maybe had a Trojan War moment. Constantine saw something Rome may have ignored: geography. It's a narrow strait where Europe, Asia, trade, armies, grain, wealth, they all pass through. And it's one defensible gate. It was founded by the Greeks. It's called Byzantion in Greek times, Byzantium for Romans. You'll call it Istanbul, but Constantine will name it Constantinople. It's not merely a new capital city. It's an imperial machine, and it's being built to survive. It will outlast the collapse of Rome in the West by a lot of centuries. So in this lesson, we will find out what really endures about Constantinople: the walls, the wealth, the law, and the beauty. You would have to visit Istanbul. I did it for the first time in 2015. It's incredible. Let's check it out. It's Constantinople. I'm Mr. Hull. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where history reveals truth and wisdom for your journey. The journey to Constantinople, the new kingdom that Constantine is establishing, building a new Rome on the water. So I want to hand you something from the past, and that's like a geography lesson. This is an incredible location. The value of it is worth controlling and fighting for. It's like the reasons for the Trojan War. So we'll see that controlling this gateway is huge. So there's wisdom here, and you'll learn the wisdom of how to start a brand new city that's going to be more glorious and beautiful than Rome. We'll see the beauty that is added to the city, and of course the wisdom of how not to fall like Rome in the West. It's the pursuit of what will last. Let's begin. The old Roman machine was crashing. Remember the crisis of the 3rd century. Rome went through 26 emperors in 49 years. Do the math, that's an average reign of like 2 years. The money was falling apart, the great silver wash swindle, because an old silver coin like the Antoninus, that coin had been watered down to a 2.5% silver wash. It's basically a copper slug with just the memory of silver. Diocletian tried to freeze prices by law, but that's not free market economics. That's not going to really work, and it didn't. So Constantine, through all of his struggles to rise to power, he has problems to solve. Old Rome sits in the river valley of the Tiber River, where you can march on it from a dozen different directions. It's wide open to attack. You got to defend all the different possible paths. And it's sitting 1,000 miles from the borders that actually matter now, defending the Danube in the north, the Euphrates way over in the east, and now look at the alternative. It's a triangle of land, a peninsula, the Golden Horn. It's jutting into the water. It includes fresh water and Europe and Asia and waterways and water guards. It's like the water will help guard you. On the north, you've got a deep harbor. That's the Golden Horn. Cuts more than 6 miles inland, a safe place to anchor an entire fleet if you go under siege. And that leaves a narrow strip of land to the west that you would actually have to defend openly. To the west, that's only one area. This piece of ground was not founded by Constantine. There's a legend to tell us where it all started. Let's go back to the 600s BC. There's a Greek leader named Byzas. Byzas is king of Megara, and he's supposed to start a colony. Why? Because he visited Delphi. We all love to visit Delphi, the center of understanding. And when Byzas went there, he understood that he was supposed to start a new colony, a new place. He asked the oracle, well, where? And the message became a riddle. Opposite the land of the blind. Opposite the land of the blind. Starting a colony, a new city. So King Byzas goes on a journey. He heads towards the ancient city of Troy. Well, that's a great location. Waterway, you have to pass through here if you're going to trade into the Sea of Marmara. And he keeps going north, almost all the way to the Black Sea. And that's when he looks. And he sees there's already some people on the shore, on the far shore, that's actually on the eastern shore. And they're settled on the eastern side. And Byzas looks on the western side. And he's like, are they not seeing the potential of what's on this western side? I already described it for you with the fresh water and the harbor and this entire area. Are these people blind? The blind. He decided that was his message. The blind were these settlers that were on the bad side, the east side, that didn't have any of these advantages. They were a primitive group, and that is the founding of Byzantium as a Greek colony. And so it's centuries later, nearly 1,000 years, Constantine would show up and dust off the old prophecy and actually use it. If Rome had Romulus and the she-wolf, well, New Rome would have Byzas and the god Apollo. Now, how are we paying for everything? How do you fund this? You need your money machine, and that money machine is a toll booth. What is a toll booth? What's a toll? Well, the geography, the amazing geography. This pathway of water is also a pathway from Europe to Asia. So it was quite exciting, my visit there in 2015. This was my first step that I ever took on the continent of Asia. It's very exciting. If you trade from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, you must pass through here. They grow a lot of grain in the area around the Black Sea. You'd be blind not to see the value of this. Charge people money to protect them on their journey. So a good, trusted money that they should charge. Do you remember what it is? Coming here from lesson 66, Constantine created the Solidus, the new coin that he was striking from the year 312, set at exactly 1/72 of a Roman pound. That's about 4.5 grams of nearly 24 karat gold. Most of our jewelry, like this championship ring, this is 10 karat gold. So this would be worth about 4 of these Constantine struck coins, the Solidus, of nearly pure gold. The Solidus is trusted for century, and we have the word solid because of this. And after a century of silver wash, swindle, aren't you tired of debasing your currency and experiencing inflation? So that thin coat of silver might have made it shine, but underneath it's Roman decline. Debasing your currency, it's going to cause a fall. But now, Constantinople has a toll booth. The toll booth is called the Komerkion. The Komerkion, the trade controller, is called the Komerkiaios. The Komerkiaios, would you like to have the job Komerkiaios? You charge a 10% flat fee, 10% of everything on your ship to travel through the Strait. That's your money machine. This peninsula toll booth, the Komerkion, 47 tons of gold per year is what this is worth. And check it out today. All the trade and the ships that are traveling through this area, the bridge that's now there that connects Europe with Asia. You can see why this peninsula is a money machine. And Constantine is going to start to spend that money, almost like he's building this place from scratch, a new capital city. Constantine gives out 80,000 free loaves of bread every single day to draw people in. The inhabitants, the new inhabitants, they get their fresh water from the Aqueduct of Valens. 150 miles of a stone channel that brings fresh water. Even more water gets added later. This is one of the longest water systems the ancient world ever built. You'll still see evidence of that there today because it feeds the bath system, these old Roman baths like Zeuxippus. Zeuxippus bath, it's decorated with more than 80 classical bronze and marble statues hauled in from all over the Greek world. But watch what he does at the very center of his new Roman forum. He raises a column of deep purple stone. It's 100 feet tall, 10 stories, and at the base, he buries something. It's the Palladium of Troy, an ancient wooden idol of Athena. It is a pagan Roman belief that this would protect the city for 1,000 years, the Palladium of Troy. Constantine takes one of the holiest objects of the old gods and buries it in the dirt under the Christian relics, under a column topped with a cross, a Christian symbol. Not destroyed, just buried, put underneath. And he's telling you in the stone who serves who. Skip ahead to the year AD 382. The Quiet War is going to go loud when Western Emperor Gratian does something that no emperor would dare to do. He orders the altar of victory removed from the Roman Senate house. So understand what the altar really was. It's a golden statue of the winged goddess of victory that stood in that chamber since 29 BC. For 400 years, Roman senators had burned incense on it and sworn their oath of loyalty across its flame. The imperial cult of Rome, if you're coming here from Lesson 57, the imperial cult of Rome shows your loyalty, and public officials, magistrates like Roman senators. Now, this is not decoration anymore. It's the soul of the room, and one morning, by imperial order, it was carried out the door. Put yourself in the sandals of Symmachus, the man in charge of this, the prefect of Rome, one of the great pagan voices of his time period, and his ancestors swore on that altar, AD 384, he stands before the imperial courts and pleads that it get returned. His argument is reverent. He reminds them that these old Roman ways, the old rites and rituals, this helped turn Hannibal back and defeat the Carthaginians in the Punic Wars. It helped push the Gauls back so that Julius Caesar could defeat them and add them to the Roman Empire. Look, you can't turn your back on this. It's not good. He says, in effect, we all look up at the same set of stars. And what difference does it make if you let an old man keep this? Keep his stargazing, his gaze on the old pagan worship. Well, the choice now with the people that are in power, we have a loyal, brilliant man who's asking to just let some of the pagan practices stick around. And Symmachus pleads about the pietas, the reverence. That was pietas, that old Roman respect. It's duty to the old Roman ways, to the ancestors. And that reverence should be a virtue. Symmachus seems to be a good man trying to defend the beautiful tradition of the old Roman ways, but across the room, Bishop Ambrose. Bishop Ambrose of Milan, no, those times are past. The altar stays out. And so what truth? It's really the reverence and the respect. It's not the act. You don't need the altar for that. And now the new capital is building something different. It's churches that tower over those old temples, that recycle the old temples, that rebuild with the marble that they're taking off pagan structures, or just making the pagan structures into new churches. So here's one that's famous in Constantinople. It's the first Hagia Irene. Hagia Irene means divine peace. And then the first Hagia Sophia. That means holy wisdom. Hagia Sophia. These two early churches. There's also the Church of the Holy Apostles, which Constantine designs to be the place where he's buried. He was baptized almost at the end of his life and died in 337 so that he could be buried among important church leaders, the holy apostles, and in reverence and respect to that, putting himself up there after his baptism, equal to the apostles, so to speak. But remember, this is the same empire, just decades earlier under Diocletian, was executing between 3,000 and 3,500 Christians in Phrygia. Remember, they surrounded and burned. Now in the 380s, it's the former persecuted religion. The Christians now hold the throne. They're in charge of the gold and the Tollbooth. And while the East is rising, the West is rotting. The Western government, that is. The old empire cannot even pay its soldiers. But that kind of power and authority is shifted east. In Constantinople, as a city of the East, it's going to be different. It's less connected to the old Latin Roman ways. They speak Greek there. They live in more Greek ways. And even visiting Istanbul, you see even the food is more like Greek and Turkish. It's not like Italian food. Have you had Greek food, Turkish food, like the grilled kebabs, the pita bread, maybe really fresh fish? There's lots of fresh vegetables and tomatoes especially. So, and don't forget, head into the bazaar where you see all their spices. This is where East meets West and the Turkish delight. How good. Have you ever had the high-end kind of fancy Turkish delight? Do you like Turkish delight? Pure sugar, unless you put the nuts and the fruits in it. But click the like button for the food that you like and leave a comment if you've had any of these dishes. I get excited for food on every one of these trips, taking kids and families over on the school trips. They would agree with me. We ate well. You eat really well over there. But let's keep moving forward. We're in the new capital, and Christian leaders are going to start to build Christian churches. These new style churches will replace the old temples. Now note that some old temples are converted to become Christian churches. You'll see that. You'll visiting these sites, you'll know the history on that. But things will develop differently. They speak Greek. They do call themselves Rhomaioi. Like they are the legacy of the West. They are Rome. They simply have moved to a better geography. This is a geography lesson. So 2 centuries now after Constantine, we're kind of skipping ahead because it's relevant to the Hagia Sophia and how it's going to be so big. In 532, in AD 532, riots are tearing through this capital, mad about taxes, the government, and now we have Emperor Justinian, who holds the throne just barely. With the riots and the upheaval that's going on. But he hangs on. His wife Theodora famously stands by him. They are strong in their government. And one strong thing he does is the most ambitious building program that the Roman world had ever seen. Even bigger. Like he will be the realization of Constantine's dream, thanks to Justinian. So what is that? If we tour some of these amazing sites. My first visit there in 2015. We started in Istanbul. It's called Istanbul today, but it's been called Constantinople for most of history, and Byzantion before that, the Greek Byzantion. If we walk, why don't we start where that Tollbooth Palace sits now, but that was the Greek Acropolis. So this was the first hill, the point where Greek Byzantion was settled by Megara, 658 BC, King Byzas. And before any, Roman, this was a place for Athena, temples to Athena, Poseidon, temples to Artemis, Dionysus, and Aphrodite. That was what was on this Acropolis. Not the tallest Acropolis we've ever seen, but the geography is incredible. It's the first sacred crown of this peninsula. And it was the Old Greek, pagan, not Christian. The Old Greek had a wall. Of course it had a wall. 27 towers, about 4 miles worth of protective wall. And this Tollbooth Palace, not far. Let's head over to the Hippodrome. This would be the most visited, important structure, Constantine's Hippodrome. We're actually in the square now called Sultan Ahmet, the park, the square, for almost 9 centuries, this area was the political theater of the empire. The theater, the place that brought people together for the chariot races, the coronations, the riots, and the way people would petition and voice their government, shouting at the throne. This was the Hippodrome, a huge racetrack. It ran about a quarter mile, and on race day, something like 30,000 people would be cheering and roaring in the stands. We've got 3 monuments that you've noticed here that came from other places. So granite obelisk carved in Egypt, solid granite, really heavy, difficult to move. This is 1400 BC, Thutmose III. He was the sidekick with Hatshepsut, a real warrior, strong leader in Egypt taking new land. So it's like a trophy from the past, 2,000 years old when Theodosius put it here in AD 390. And the marble base on it, the emperor presides over the races with these decorations. So 2 obelisks, but here's my favorite, the twisted bronze stump. Maybe it's the most loaded monument. It's my favorite thing to talk about because it stood at Delphi. It was 800 years there as a thank offering for the 31 Greek city-states that defeated Persia at Plataea, melted down those weapons. The bronze serpent column hauled here by Constantine. And what's there is the original, but it's just the stump. We're looking at the Greek memory of defeating Persians. But Constantine's original wall being pretty much lost under the city, the Hippodrome would have been a spectacular area where everyone came. Let's go out west to check out walls. Constantine's original wall would soon be way outdated and outgrown because the city's going to grow so much. And in 413, AD 413, the empire built the Theodosian walls, 4 miles of stone that cut the peninsula from sea to sea. The geography. The inner wall is up to 40 feet with 96 towers, and the outer wall is going to have 92 more and a moat that's 65 feet across. Earthquakes kind of tore it up in 447. The city rebuilt within months because these are important walls. And for 1,000 years, no enemy could break through those, right? Because we're going to have to invent gunpowder eventually. That'll be part of that much later story. Now, how about the water system, the aqueducts? The Romans are so famous for that, and we need to bring in a lot of fresh water. So let's check out this bridge. We can still see the Aqueduct of Valens. That was finished in 373, AD 373, and it's 3,000 feet, nearly 100 feet high, 10 football fields of stone arches that are still standing that we drove through, kind of, so many sites of such rich history when you visit Istanbul. It's visible. This is the channel of water that's basically 265 miles long. Feeds more than 100 cisterns under the city, a unique feature of Constantinople. All these cisterns holding this water. Tucked inside the palace courtyard is the survivor almost everyone is walking past. Hagia Irene, that means divine peace, the oldest church in the Eastern Roman city, was founded in 330 AD with Constantine and rebuilt after the fires and the riots of 532. So this is what we've got. Kind of makes it a miracle that this particular spot where the palace, the Topkapi Palace, it was never converted to a mosque. One of the history lessons with Ottoman Turks and Islamic rule, converting these old churches to mosques is something that happens, and most of them were. And we're close to where Constantine could have been buried. He's not buried at the big one, the Hagia Sophia. We're heading that way, but there was a mausoleum in the Church of the Holy Apostles that was nearby on a different hill. He was laid to rest. Constantine's burial site in 337, AD 337, he wanted to sleep among the relics of the 12. The Holy Apostles were not buried here, but relics were brought here to venerate, and Constantine wanted to be a part of that. He was baptized practically on his deathbed, and clearly you can see with his strong leadership, he is associating himself with the apostles. So we should have his burial site, shouldn't we? Somewhere. But the Church of the 12 Apostles was demolished in 1461. And the Faith Mosque was built on top of that site today. So Constantine's tomb lost somewhere underneath the mosque that was placed on top of the ruins. So it's a bit of a lesson to consider that even the man who built the eternal city couldn't keep his own grave and be thought of amongst the apostles. Now, we're saving the best for last, Hagia Sophia, the Holy Wisdom Church that was built at the time after Constantine, but it's Justinian who made this huge version. It was first dedicated in AD 360. And then a second version in AD 415. But the riots of 532 destroyed this. And so that big building project Justinian undertook, in under 6 years, they pulled this off. And on December 27th, AD 537, is where they inaugurated the building, and you could stand under the dome, look up at it, look up at these domes 102 feet. And it floats, right? It's like floating 182 feet above the floor, spanning 102 feet. It's as high off the ground as an 18-story building. Now, Rome's Pantheon Dome is actually wider at 142 feet across compared to 102 across. And that Pantheon is heavy concrete, but Justinian's architects solved a much more difficult problem because they set a round dome over a square hall using curved triangular supports. These are the pendentives. These supports the pendentives. What is the pendentive doing? It's carrying the weight down onto four great arches. And our tour guide said it's an elephant. It's like a big elephant holding up. But then this spectacular thing, the 40 windows, the fact that all this light is able to come through and interrupt the support of the building. Like, this is an engineering marvel, and now we have light pouring in all the way around, and the stones even more so seem to be floating. It's supposed to be a dome hanging from heaven, a golden thread, golden chain. golden chain holding up. And so for nearly 1,000 years, this was the largest cathedral on earth. The Hagia Sophia has had its share of struggle. The first dome actually crashed by an earthquake in AD 558. It was rebuilt even higher in the year 562. In 1453, the Ottomans made it a mosque. When Constantinople finally falls, because of cannonballs, because of the invention of gunpowder, they take over. Ottoman Turks are Islamic. And so the conflict with Christian believers, then we see it as they convert the Christian churches into mosques. But also with Islamic belief, there are so many Christian mosaics, scenes on the inside. And a Muslim belief about not having these types of images meant that they're going to plaster over them. They didn't destroy them. So covering it up, because if it's a mosque, it's got to be a prayer hall and you can't have figures. That's why when you go to the Blue Mosque, the architecture has been copied all over Turkey, and the Blue Mosque is just kind of at the other end of the street. And inside the Blue Mosque, you can see geometry, just all the geometric. So there are no figures, no living figures. So inside the Hagia Sophia, these plastered over images were chipped away a little bit. I mean, like just the covering, because it became a museum in 1935, going from a mosque to a museum, because the vision of Ataturk from that time period, he wanted Turkey to be more Western. He wanted, so you don't have to have every outside religion or be opposed to Christianity. So this became a museum in 1935. And in my first visit in 2015, I visited the museum. But in 2020, it's back to being a mosque again. And so prayers and tourists are now sharing the same ancient floor with a different religious context. And we've had classical moments like this. It just takes a lot of understanding, a lot of wisdom for all the different factors that go in. If you have an opinion, drop that answer below. Students have been chiming in on this. Is one of the bigger ones. So since the 90s, I want to hear what kids think as we see Turkey and their role, their membership in NATO, and President Erdogan. If you've got an opinion, and be sure to subscribe, because everything stitches together. Your wisdom and your understanding of all these classical lessons helps you know how to think through a situation like this. Should the Hagia Sophia be a mosque like it is now? Should it be a museum like it was in 2015 on my first visit? But one lesson at a time will make you a classical scholar. We looked at the Blue Mosque and you probably saw that central dome also on Pendentives, the half domes, the minarets that are around. These were all original to that Hagia Sophia from Justinian. And 1,000 years after Justinian's architects, the current architects are still answering to that dome and copying it for the mosque styles that you see all over Turkey. Back to the geography, and you see how close we are to the water and how strategic this is. And looking up the Bosporus a little bit, a lot of activity. In 1973, look at that bridge. It's nearly a mile long, and that deck is 210 feet over the water to allow ships to go underneath. But this was the first ever road that could connect Europe to Asia, the first road in history to run unbroken from Europe to Asia. And I didn't go over this in 2015. It's a lot of traffic and kind of out of the way. That is 600 million tons of cargo, 40,000 cargo ships, tankers, grain ships, container ships. 27 centuries after King Byzas looked at this water and saw all kinds of potential. He saw these people must have been blind. They missed the amazing geography, and it's still showing, and it's still paying. Constantine's Tollbooth has never closed. It's just changed management, as it were. but the enduring Roman legacy. Besides this architecture, we could look at Roman law. The Justinian brought Roman law over here as well. And in our classroom discussions, we would look at this Roman law. It's called the Corpus Juris Civilis, and how they looked at the old law and they tried to improve it. Justinian's Code is what it's called. And we would do these legal projects on, defining marriage, protecting people and property, rules of evidence, criminal justice. It is a massive leap past Rome's old 12 tables. And I think it shows you Rome has fallen in the West by this point. In our coming lessons, we're going to go over the great detail of how the Western Empire has fallen. But the legacy endures with Constantinople. Rome's 12 tables have been replaced, and the Roman law, the concept of justice, is very much a part of our Western civilization today. What endures, what's true, what's good, what's beautiful. Those domes are beautiful, the arts. So we've got some lessons coming up about the fall of Rome. That is a serious subject, and we don't want it to happen again. But thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.